Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to At the Coach's Table Live. I'm Executive Coach Phyllis Reagin, and 3 times a week, I'm going to go live for 30 minutes at a time. This is just quick bites for you to take away that you can actually start implementing right away after you listen to the lives. The idea behind this is just to give you bite-sized pieces so they don't overwhelm you and you can start practicing them and really become proficient with them. I'm going to be sharing with you the very same strategies that I provide to my executive coaching clients. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, in case you don't know about me or you don't follow me. But I've been a coach for over 12 years. I'm coaching executives, executive teams, leaders, creative professionals that are in the entertainment, media, sports, production, creative industries. And they come to my coaching because often these professionals want either to improve their confidence around their leadership, clarity about their leadership. They want to improve how they influence to really, get buy-in for some of their big ideas. And also all of this leading to that they have the impact that they really want to make with their career. So that's the focus of my coaching. Today, I'm going to be talking to you around the mindset that happens around the fourth quarter of the year. I see it frequently. Leaders show up talking about this voice of feeling like I'm behind. And it creates this pressure, undue pressure that they don't need, that actually is quite distracting to them and to the teams that they lead. So for me, I've had this experience when I was a studio exec. I actually would go into leadership meetings in Q4 and hear about what everybody was focused on, the results that they had achieved, what they were driving forward in Q4. And what it produced in me was that I'm behind voice. And instead of really being focused on what mattered, it was more like a panicked productivity. And it had a ripple effect. It affected my team. So felt like we were racing towards something with a lot of lack of clarity and direction. That's really important. And what I recognized at that point was that, of course, was not helpful, but it certainly was not helpful for my team. So I did what I'm sharing with my clients. I did a lot of mindset work. So my background is also in psychology and neuroscience. So I'd like to bring in things that are going to help you with your brain so your brain can help you in these moments. So let's talk about the thinking that comes along with I'm behind voice. That I behind voice is probably not true. So let's talk about what's going on. What happens often is you have a trigger. So maybe your trigger is you're hearing your colleagues talk about their successes for the end of the year for meeting their goals. So that's your trigger. And then you notice that you're anxious, that you are really not focused, or you're hyper focused. So you're going after things in a, maybe in a rushed, frantic way. And then, so that's the action. Sometimes there's inaction. You feel a little bit like panicked. So you shut down and you maybe aren't focusing on the things you want to focus. So before you have a trigger, before you have the emotion, and before you have the action or the inaction, you actually have a thought. And this is really important for you to start noticing and observing about yourself. So is this thought really true? And what am I saying, actually? So I had that trigger and I said something. What was it I said? I said I'm behind. I said I'm not doing what I need to do. I'm not going to get the results I want. I'm scattered. I'm not going to make my goals. This is going to be a problem for my career. I mean, something was said that created the emotions that you had. So you really want to go back to, what am I thinking when I experience this anxiety, frustration, or hyper focus or lack of focus? What did I say to myself? So that's where I begin with my clients. Recently, I had a client, I'll call her Maya. She came into coaching. She's an executive producer for a major streaming company. And she was coming in with the same feeling, like I'm behind, I'm not going to reach my goals. Her team was feeling it too. They were flustered and frustrated. And once she started exploring what was that voice really telling her, she realized that it was not true. Actually, her team had made a really big creative pivot, and they were onto something amazing, and it was requiring something different from them. It wasn't the same productivity path that they had planned, but they were moving forward. And it may not have looked the same as what she wanted for her Q4 outcomes, but she was going to get to the end results. So she needed to pivot her own mindset about the pivot. So we started working on a neuroscience frame technique that's going to help you as well. So I'm going to tell you, so stay tuned. I'm going to tell you what that is. Once she was able to use this technique, she actually walked away from it feeling like my path is the right path and we're going at the right pace. So that was her reframed thought. My path is the right path, we're going at the right pace. She was able to really believe in that, focus in on it, and communicate that back in different ways to her key stakeholders, to her team. And everybody seemed to be calmer, clearer, more focused, not worried, not in hyper focus, not thinking that things weren't going to work out. So the ripple effect was exponential and really important for her team and for herself. So she came into her leadership feeling calmer and clearer and more focused. So I'm going to talk to you about what's going on in your brain when you experience these thoughts. What happens is when you have a trigger, like being worried about your performance for end of year, you actually activate your amygdala. And your amygdala in your brain is where it's a threat detector. So it's scanning, it's looking for threats, so you can be prepared. It was really important to us in our early evolution part of being human. It's not so helpful now because often that threat detector is really firing off incorrectly. So if you have a trigger and you feel like, oh my gosh, it's doom or gloom, something bad's going to happen, you probably triggered your amygdala and it's telling you it's a threat. So what you need to do is calm the amygdala so that your prefrontal cortex comes back online. Your prefrontal cortex of your brain is where you make your decisions, you problem solve, you do strategic thinking, you make sound decisions. It's where creativity can be. So it's important for you to calm down your amygdala so you have access to that. So when I see leaders that feel scattered, hyper-focused, lack of focus, it's their amygdala. So we want to see, what are you saying to yourself that triggered your amygdala where it's now hijacking your prefrontal cortex? So what are those thoughts? Those thoughts are actually called thinking traps. Some people call them automatic negative thoughts. That stands for ants. So think of it as ants crawling around, triggering scattered thinking, triggering, anxious thoughts, triggering lack of focus. They're all over your brain, right? You want to know what's going on with those thoughts. Are they true? Because once you start noticing your thoughts, start observing them, that's when you can really, it's like a microscope to it, right? You can really see if they're true or not, which helps deactivate them. So if you're having I'm behind thoughts, think about some thinking traps. And there are 15 known thinking traps. There might be more, but there are 15 that I tell my clients about. So one is shoulding. So shoulding are those thoughts where you are like, I should be further along. I should have known better. I should have been a better leader for my team. Should. Another one is mind reading. And mind reading is where you say, I believe I know what you're thinking about me. I believe I know what you're thinking about my leadership. It's usually negative. So they're thinking something negative. And you get caught in that, and it can make you do the wrong things because you believe you're actually trying to help what they think is wrong. Or you start to really quiet down because you think you're saying the wrong things, doing the wrong things. So you want to recognize thoughts that are mind reading. You might be doing some catastrophizing. So that's a thinking trap. Catastrophizing is seeing the worst possible outcome without any evidence, any other evidence that's possible, that could happen, or something else could happen that could be plausible. So that's catastrophizing. Another one is personalization. So you believe you're responsible for what's happening externally that's negative. As a leader, you are responsible often, right? But maybe not all the outcomes that you think that you're responsible for are really attributed to your leadership. So you want to pull that apart and make sure you understand what that thought is that you're having. So once you recognize what your thinking traps are, and I have a list of them. So if you're really interested in understanding your thinking traps, go ahead and email me. I'm at Phyllis at thecoachestable.com. Just email me that you want the thinking traps handout, and my team and I will make sure you receive that. The goal for you is to start observing your thoughts, checking them against your own handout that you have of the thinking traps. So you start recognizing. Once you start recognizing your thinking traps, this is powerful because this is going to allow you to think about, am I having a thinking trap? If I am having these thoughts, are they true or untrue? Often when we ask that one question, we'll start to get curious and look around and think, I really don't have a lot of evidence that supports this thought, so I probably need to let it go and not hang on so tightly to it being true and guiding my decision making or guiding my leadership. So I had another client, Sydney. She came to coaching, and she's a creative director for another entertainment studio. She was having these thoughts that were coming from comparison. So you might also have this where you look around at others' idealized selves. So they're not really true about who they are, but this is how you see them, and you compare them to you, and you don't measure up, right? So when often at the end of the year, this kind of comparison can happen. And as we dug deeper into that, she looked across and realized it wasn't true. Her team really had achieved some great outcomes. She wasn't giving herself or them enough credit. And she was really just leaning into something that had become a pattern for her throughout her leadership and even prior to her leadership, where she compared herself. What it did was it disempowered her. It made her see herself in less than a positive light. She then didn't show up the way she needed to. She wasn't as strong with her convictions. Her POV was kind of weak in some of the senior leadership meetings. So when she was clear that that thought actually was not true, that it was a thinking trap, we then started working on this hack I'm going to teach you for your brain to get out of this. So here it is. I want you to challenge yourself with this. This is a neuroscience reframing. It's called, you name it and you reframe it. Okay, easy to remember. The naming it comes when you understand what kind of thought it is, right? Sometimes people want you to do an overarching naming. So you would say, I'm having an anxiety thought, or I'm having a low confidence thought. I like my clients to get it a little bit more granular for their brain. So they start with understanding what those thinking traps are, and then they move into, I'm having a shooting thought. What happens for the brain is really interesting. Once you name it, it somehow deactivates your amygdala. There's not so much nebulous things happening around that thought. So your brain's not trying to make a narrative that's usually negative, because we're negative bias with our brains. So it's not trying to create this negative narrative. Instead, what it's doing is it pauses. It hears you. I'm having a shooting thought. I'm having a catastrophizing thought. And now your prefrontal cortex can get back online. Okay, so that's what you're having. It's not the end of the world, really. You're not going to be fired, really. You're having this thinking trap. Once you name it, you can reframe it. And you want to reframe it with something that's believable, because if you tell your brain something that's really out there and it doesn't believe it, it will spin, it'll go back to activating the amygdala, and it'll send you all these thoughts about why that's not true. So if you go from, I'm doing a subpar job leading my team in this final part of the year, to we're having extremely positive outcomes, and it's not quite that yet, not true. Your brain will shoot off all these thoughts and you'll get really, distracted, or just not able to engage in the kind of thinking with clarity and calm that you need. So make sure your reframing is believable. So if you have a thought of, I'm behind, then maybe your reframing is, such as it was for my client, we're working on the pace that makes sense for us to get to the goals that are important. Or I am going a little bit slower because right now the learning is really important to me to get to the goals that matter. So that's empowering. That tells you you're moving forward, you're not stuck, you're not doing the wrong things. It prevents unfocus and hyperfocus from happening, or complete shutdown from happening. And your team can get on board with that. Yes, we are on the right path. It is going at the pace it needs to go for us to get to the goals that really matter, or the learning that we need to create whatever we're creating, or to, reach the goals that are important. So that's the reframing. So the technique is name it and reframe it. So that's what you're going to do over the next week before we meet again. And I'll talk to you about my next meetup for us. But you can set this as a weekly goal for you. So this time next Wednesday, you can look back and think, just start observing. These are the thoughts that I have. I'm going to check it against thinking traps. So make sure you download them. And you can then really start to work on the technique, naming it and reframing it. And what's powerful is once you start reframing it, you don't just put that away. You want to say it all the time. You're helping your brain. When you think it, you say it out loud. You can post it places. My clients post it often around their computer monitor. They say it to themselves when they wake up. They say it midday. They say it at the end of the day. And before you know it, when they are not even consciously trying to say it, those thoughts are automatically being sent to them, right? So you got your brain's working for you, those neurons are firing off, and you're having these thoughts instead of the other. So you've just reframed it and you've replaced those negative thoughts that are unhelpful. So that's what you'll be doing over the next 7 days. I'd love to know how it's working out for you. Feel free to drop me a line at Phyllis at thecoachestable.com. And I have also, if you like these kind of chats that are quick and you walk away with something that you can try right away, I'm going live 3 times a week. For October's calendar, just go on my website. So my company website is at thecoachestable.com. You can see the name there.com, and go to the tab Live Events, and you can download the monthly calendar. Or you can go to my personal website, which is phyllisreagin.com, and go to the Live Events tab and download it from there. And feel free to join my community. I send out helpful emails and tips throughout the week, such as these, that can help you. They're bite-sized. You can put them into practice right away. All right, here's what's coming up. Friday, I'm going live again for 30 minutes, and I'm going to talk about how to lead during uncertainty. When you're leading and trying to figure it out at the same time and real time, and how challenging that can be in that kind of environment under those kinds of conditions. So this is going to help you lead with clarity and confidence for your team, and how you actually are perceived by others, like your colleagues, your manager, your key stakeholders. Really great tips coming your way. So join me on Friday, same link, same Zoom link, same time, 12 p.m. to 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. All right, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday. Bye-bye.